Tonight, are millions of us facing debt disaster?
So do we have a crisis with 8 million people who are struggling to sleep at nights because of their debts? Yeah, that's a crisis if you ask me.
What's the impact on our health?
More than a third of our clients have seriously considered or attempted suicide as a way out of their debt problems.
Could you be due compensation?
It would have been quite abundantly clear that they should not have been offering me these sort of payday loans at astronomical rates.
And what did this debt-ridden household do next?
It's a bit of a relief knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that I can be a better role model for my kids.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. With the average British household now owing £58,000, including mortgage debt, many may not realise just how close they are to financial disaster. So what potential solutions might there be for those from all walks of life with money problems? And in our hour of need, can advice from debt experts help? Asma Mir investigates.
Debt has many faces, many challenges, and with interest rates on the up, potentially many more victims. It's called the debt time bomb. Millions of us just about managing on loans, overdrafts or maxed out credit cards. But how far away are we from potential financial meltdown? The average family spent £900 more than they earned last year. The first time in 30 years that UK households' outgoings have surpassed their income. So with saving levels also at record lows, do we have any idea how close many of us may be to big trouble? Martin Lewis does.
Let's make this plain. When people who haven't experienced it think about debt crisis, they think about someone who's been out spending, putting it all on the credit cards and it's all gone wrong. But actually what you often find debt crisis is about is change of circumstance. Losing your partner, getting divorced, losing your leg, all of those type of things that stop you working, stop the income coming in, all of those type of things are huge factors when it comes to debt.
British households owe an estimated £19 billion in utility bills, missed council tax payments and overpaid benefits. Another £72 billion is owed in credit card arrears. And it's grinding people down. People like Liz Nordia. Liz and husband Mark emigrated from South Africa to start a new life in the UK 15 years ago. They arrived in Britain with high hopes.
Well, Mark and I have been together since we were at school. We've been married for 32 years. We were both working. Yeah. I had 2 jobs. Mark worked at night. We didn't own our own place.
Liz was a low-paid care worker, Mark a lorry mechanic. They were just about coping, bringing up their 2 children. Then a catalogue of problems hit them. It started when Liz had a heart attack.
After I'd been sick, things just started going downhill. I had to reduce my hours. I was off work for a while, but that wasn't too bad. It was when Mark had to have a shoulder operation and had to be off work for a while.
Liz's mum needed financial help when she got ill. Then their car broke down and needed replacing. They got into a mess with credit cards and a bank loan, just trying to keep their heads above water. All the time bringing up 2 children on a shoestring budget. Their debts ballooned to £36,000.
Very stressful. I was given medication for depression. And Mark being Mark, very quiet, he didn't say or do anything and ask for any help.
The couple say they were recommended an IVA, or an individual voluntary arrangement. This is where you pay a percentage of your debt. The rest is written off. It weighed very heavily on Mark in particular.
I felt useless. There was no end to it. It seemed like everything I tried to do, a big wall in front of you.
It took Mark and Liz 7 years to clear their debts. They are both now on benefits with, they say, little prospect of being able to work again. They're only in their mid-50s. They had felt at the time that the honourable option was to try to pay back some of the money they owed. In hindsight, they wish they'd gone bankrupt.
IVAs can be a good solution. They can, and they do work for some people. My concern about IVAs, especially from the commercial debt help organisations that there are out there, is they are very profitable for those commercial organisations, and you have to question, are they being done because they are in the individual's best interest, or they're in the best interest of the people giving advice?
Ready? Go!
Under the IVA, Mark and Liz ended up having to pay their creditors £9,000 of the £36,000 total debt. They also paid £8,000 to the debt management company in fees.
When people are going to ask for debt help, they're at the most vulnerable, they're most desperate, they're most trusting, and they're putting themselves in the hands of people who may be paid a lot more for recommending one product like an IVA than for recommending other solutions.
If they had declared themselves bankrupt, it would have cost them almost £700 each at today's prices. Their debts would have been written off after a year, with no fees due to debt management advisors.
Bankruptcy is a bogey word. I mean, it scares the pants off lots of people. But actually, done right, it's one of those things that people tell me, I'm so glad I did it.
The Financial Conduct Authority, which regulates debt management providers, told us that it intends to review them to identify areas where improvements could be made. Its report is expected early next year. The Insolvency Practitioners Association, which represents about half of practitioners, warned of the importance of using regulated advisors who would face sanction for giving bad advice. What if you're poor and in debt? Like single parent Gemma.
You see the baby ones?
She's on benefits and owes more than £6,000. She faced a dilemma when she moved into her new unfurnished council house.
Couldn't have made my kids sit on a concrete floor for 3 years to save up as much as I needed to save up to buy a second-hand sofa. Get a big handful.
So she went to rent-to-buy shop Bright House for a new sofa to be paid in instalments over 3 years. Annual interest rate at the time, 65%.
And then my phone broke. So then I went and got a phone from Bright House. I got a fridge freezer because mine was broken.
She even got her and her 2 daughters' beds from Bright House.
I didn't ever miss a payment. But then when me never missing a payment, I was always missing other stuff like paying my gas and electric.
But it all ended in tears. As other debts built up, Gemma couldn't afford to keep up the repayments. Bright House customers can choose to return its goods at any time, and that's what she did, handed it all back. All outstanding charges were cancelled. But Gemma had lost her sofa, beds, fridge, washing machine and phone.
The sofa was where that hurt me a lot because I'd paid all that money and it was just gone. And I had nothing to show for it. This was my home. And I made it into a home. I made it look homely and nice and tidy and clean and everything that a kid should have. And to have it all taken away, it was very disheartening. I just felt like a failure, a complete failure. There's no other way of explaining it. It felt like failure. That was probably the worst week of my life.
Bright House told the programme that if they had known the extent of Gemma's financial woes, they could have offered her a payment holiday or reduced payments over an extended period.
It's quite perverse. It's called the poverty premium. The poorest in society pay the most for gas and electricity. The poorest in society, if they need to borrow, would charge the highest interest rates. The less money you have, the poorer you are, the more you pay for virtually everything. And dealing with your debt is no exception.
Gemma admits she's been hiding from debt for many years. Final demands go in the most convenient drawer to be forgotten. Her curtains remain shut all day in case the bailiffs come round. She needs professional help, so we're sending her some.
My first objective is to find out exactly how much she owes, because often people aren't aware of how much they owe. See what priority debts need to be paid, and then look at her budget. There's always a solution for debt. It may not be the one they like, but there's always a solution.
Jane is the chair of the Institute of Money Advisors and has been a debt advisor for more than 15 years. She gets to work, fully aware that her advice could be life-changing.
Before you actually faced up to it and thought, I'm going to do something about this, what things went through your mind?
Avoiding everything.
So,
I used to wake up in the morning, get the girls ready, or take them off to school, go out for the day, come back. Avoid being at home completely.
Why? Why did you avoid being at home?
I didn't want anyone to come around to my house. Any bailiffs, any enforcement officers.
Jane is the bringer of bad but not unexpected news. Gemma has very little disposable cash to pay off her debts. It's time for drastic action.
Well, the first thing is, could write to all creditors saying, I'm having real financial difficulties. I'm in touch with a free debt advice agency. They're going through my budget at the moment. Would you accept a token payment of £1 a month?
If accepted, it's a way of Gemma getting some temporary breathing space so that she can confront her debts. But there's more.
Please don't be ashamed to go to a food bank, which will tide you over while you're starting to get these things going. You're using a food bank because at the moment you're in crisis and you're trying to move forward, and this will enable you to do so.
I'm not ashamed to go to a food bank. If it puts food in my kids' mouths, then that is the be-all of end-all of my life. You feed your kids.
When you're really skint, there is a means-tested alternative to bankruptcy in England and Wales. It's called a debt relief order. It works where you owe less than £20,000. And if you qualify, your debts will be written off after a year for a £90 fee. Remember, Gemma's debt is just over £6,000, so she decides to go for it.
It's a bit more of a relief, knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and I don't have to wallow in it, and that I can be a better role model for my kids.
Hi, this is Carmelina from Christians Against Poverty. How can I help you today?
Here's one of a number of free debt counselling agencies out there. But this one has a unique way of celebrating when clients become debt-free. A Mexican wave.
So one of the best things that we do here at Christians Against Poverty is that whenever a client goes debt-free, we celebrate with them.
They helped nearly 3,000 people out of debt last year.
Robert's received a letter threatening bailiff action.
By the way, you don't have to be a Christian to get help.
Whilst you may lose the asset, you'd be better off in the long term.
Alongside the Mexican wave, there's heartache.
We step into homes and sometimes we can see incredible destitution here in the UK. We have had cases where clients have told us that they've filled bin bags with clothes in order to create a bed for them and their children to sleep on. Amongst our client base, it's more than a third of our clients have seriously considered or attempted suicide as a way out of their debt problems.
The office is decorated with the first names of clients who are now debt-free.
We used to see more people come to us with credit cards and personal loans. Actually, what we've seen is now 6 in 10 of our clients are behind in either their rent or their mortgage. And a third of the debt that people come to us with are the essential bills. It's things like energy, the rent, the council tax. And the ramifications for not paying these debts can be really quite significant and really quick.
Obviously, I can see that things are quite tight.
The government has committed to introducing a breathing space law, a 6-week break from mounting fees and charges while you seek advice, sometime soon.
What if you're cash poor but asset rich? This bungalow cost £29,000 when it was bought more than 35 years ago. Today, it's worth 15 times that. But how do you unlock that cash? Is that a nice place you've got here?
Yeah.
Lovely part of the country.
Absolutely. It's not a very nice view today, though.
No.
Pensioner Anthony Martin didn't know which way to turn when he found himself in a debt hole.
Well, it started when my wife passed away, to be honest. That's when my income fell dramatically. But I'd got a lot of savings at that time, which enabled me to cover myself for 3 or 4 years.
So you had, did you say about 40,000 on credit cards?
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly, okay.
Yeah. Things like, for example, an oil boiler. I took that on a credit card. Nearly £4,000. I had to replace that. No heating, no water. I tried to borrow some money from the bank at a lower rate, and they wouldn't lend to me.
Did you ever think about selling the house?
I'm 75. I want to stay here where I am. I'm happy out here. You know, I'm a country person. I like to keep chickens. I like to grow things. And I like my home out here.
Anthony saw an advert about equity release. He could get a loan secured on the value of his house for some upfront cash. The loan, with a 6% annual interest rate at the time, would only be payable when he died. The result? He paid off his debts and retained a little extra for home improvements. It's not for everybody, though, is it? Because there are some people who want their children to inherit all the value of their property.
That's right. You've worked all your life for what you've got. I'm sure most kids, unless they're desperately hard up or in dire need of the money that you might leave them, then you owe it to yourself to live your life a bit. And my kids needn't worry. There's still 300,000 of equity in the house, even though I've borrowed this money to live a better life.
On the downside, Anthony's policy locks him into a higher rate of interest than is generally now available on the market. And there are big penalties if he decides to pay off the original loan, for example, by downsizing.
Now, the first thing I would say is if you're in your 50s and 60s and you've got a big house and you're going to need some cash from it, generally the most efficient way to do it is sell the house and downsize. And by the way, try and do it a bit earlier, because I often hear anecdotally people when they're 60 saying they'll do it in 5 years. They get to 65, it's another 5 years. They get to 70, 75 and they go, do you know what, we're not moving now.
But in Anthony's case, like all others, because his loan isn't repaid until he dies, it could be costly.
Now, the problem with not paying it off is that means the interest accrues and accrues and accrues. So if you got an equity release at 6%, that means the amount that you borrow would double every 12 years. So if you're doing equity release, do as little as possible, as late as possible.
Judging by the number of people taking it up, equity release is here to stay. There's been a near threefold increase in the past 5 years, now standing at nearly 70,000 policies a year.
I think it will continue to snowball whilst interest rates are down where they are. If something big goes wrong in your house, you've got to pay for it from somewhere. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't go on lavish holidays, I don't ride around in a £50,000 car. I just live in the country and I like it.
Around 30% of those taking out equity release need cash to tackle a current debt, according to the Equity Release Council.
We have to recognise that debt, in a way, is all around us, and that the equity we have in a house is something which is not necessarily needing to be locked away. It's something that can be used to help to sort out some of the existing problems we have. The kids have to, I think, bite the bullet that their parents have needs and costs in later life.
And how do you fight back if you've been treated unfairly by the financial industry? Payday lenders have made millions of loans worth billions of pounds over the years. But did the loans companies always play fair? It appears not.
Literally, I was the absolute perfect customer. Young, stupid, naive, not a care in the world. I'd just moved into my first house, off leave from leaving my parents' house.
Ian Wright, given his newfound freedom, quickly began living beyond his means, with payday loans bridging the gap.
I was living sort of quite a lavish lifestyle. I had some sort of performance cars which were quite expensive on insurance and fuel. I was pretty much maxed out my credit cards to run my cars and then using my Wonga loans to then pay my main bills.
It couldn't go on forever. In Ian's case, he lost his job. But for a while, he could still maintain his lifestyle with the continued help of payday loans.
Every time you take out a payday loan, the next time you go to take one, because I've paid it off in a timely fashion, they're going to offer you more. So I think the first time I got offered one, it was say £250. The next time it was £500, and before you know it, I'm being offered £1,000.
Payday lenders were coming to the short-term rescue, but Ian no longer fitted the criteria to be given loans.
I just lost my job. It would have been quite abundantly clear that they should not have been offering me these sort of payday loans at astronomical rates. The first month it helped out slightly. It enabled me to pay my bills and keep up to date with my rent and council tax, etc. The following month though, it made the situation massively worse. I was taking payday loans to pay off payday loans.
That was 6 years ago, when annual interest rates on payday loans were a hefty 4,000%. His family stepped in to bail him out. But much more recently, Ian found out he might be eligible for compensation. He applied and got a £300 settlement. Claimants have been known to get more than £3,000 refunded.
If you haven't been treated fairly, you can complain to the payday lender and ask for your money back. So some examples of not being treated fairly: they didn't tell you how much it would cost. They didn't give you accurate information. They implied or told you that you can keep rolling it over for the long term. And crucially, they didn't check you can afford it. So if you're sitting out there and you've had a payday loan in the past, even if it's long gone now, if any of those circumstances apply, get in touch with the payday loan company and tell them, I don't think you treated me fairly for this reason, and I would like my money back. There are free tools online that can help you do this. And if they don't give you your money back, take them to the Financial Ombudsman.
Payday lender Wonga, who Ian got his compensation from, went into administration today. The Consumer Finance Association, which represents the short-term lending sector, said they didn't comment on individual cases. They added, "We believe that there is a responsibility on both the borrower and the lender to ensure that taking a loan is the right decision. There are strong protections in place, and if things go wrong, we would urge you to contact your lender as soon as possible." When it comes to debt, there's plenty of evidence that much of the UK's population is in the red.
The barriers that we have to people borrowing when it's unnecessary have been eroded. When should you borrow? Something that's planned, affordable, one-off and needed. A mortgage, fine. Willy-nilly filling gaps in your income, which many people unfortunately feel the need to do, is never a solution. Because if you haven't got the money now, once you've got a debt and you're having to repay that, what's going to change in a month's time or in a year's time that means you can repay it?
Experts say that whatever your level of debt, there is a solution, and that there is never a better time to get advice than straight away.
Now, if you'd like more information about tonight's programme or for a list of agencies who provide free advice, just visit our website at itv.com/tonight. Until next time, good evening and thanks for watching. Coming up next week,